Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be talking about how I decided to play without PoB for once in Path of Exile. Now, I have been playing Path of Exile off and on for the past few years, just casually, nothing too serious, right? Mainly because I was playing a different ARPG very hard, and I just didn't have time for Path of Exile. But recently, due to things that were out of my control, I have decided that why not? Let's play some Path of Exile and let's take it seriously. And recently I was playing a two-stone run on a Slayer, a Shockwave Slayer, and I had like a 5-minute kill on Black Star, and it was absolutely awful. And I was just kind of angry. And that's just kind of how a lot of my two-stone runs have been, is just really bad. And I couldn't figure out why. I don't know what I was doing wrong, what kind of issues I was coming across, but then I had this wild idea. I realized that Path of Building, while very good and very strong, it was giving me this false sense of security. It was pretty much not lying to me, but it was making it easier to lie to yourself, right? When you put stuff into Path of Building and you're not too in tune with the game like I was, it was kind of showing me stuff that I probably wasn't going to have, or like, the state of my gems, the state of my gear and all that. So I said, screw all that. Let's try playing without Path of Building for once, because I had played Last Epoch like this for years now, because Last Epoch doesn't have Path of Building. So I just played the game without logging into Path of Building once, right? And it was definitely an interesting experience. I was able to make the build instantly and make it actually function. This time around, we're playing Firestorm of Pelting Elementalist. I just wanted to try out Firestorm Pelting, and I was told by a friend that Elementalist is pretty strong, and spoilers, it kind of is. Now, I was having fun with it, and I was like, it was a lot easier to make the character, because I realized that, like, while Path of Building's really good, it's only really good when you already know what you're doing. But if you're like me, who had taken a break from Path of Exile for years, Path of Building ended up being more of a hindrance than an assistance, because what's the point of having everything at your fingertips to test and to do numbers if you have no context behind those numbers because you haven't been playing Path of Exile? So, playing without it for a little bit made me realize, hey, like, you can kind of play the game without Path of Building if you really try hard enough, right? And you really do math and all that, and you read the nodes. I know, spoiler warning, like reading nodes is very strong, right? But I noticed in general that I was having a lot more of an organic time. I wasn't like constantly looking at Path of Building. I was just more like looking at a node. I'm like, okay, do I have enough percent damage? All right, let's get some crit. Do I have enough crit? Let's get some crit multi. Okay, do I feel tanky enough? Let's get some chunk. Do I feel like as though I'm tanky enough and I could go for a little bit more damage? Let's focus on more on damage. And thankfully, because of the respecialization that Fossis has, that they've added recently in Path of Exile, where you can respec for gold, because of that specifically, it has made actually playing without PoB so much easier, because I can just simply look around and mess around with options instead of being forced into a specific setup and waiting for, regret orbs to fix my issues, right? And that definitely helped out a lot, but it was rather refreshing. Now, am I going to play all the time like this? Hell no, dude. Like, Path of Building is like crack cocaine. It's like one of the best drugs of all time. Like, some of the best fun of playing Path of Exile is playing with Path of Building, right? Like, a lot of people mean that, like, Path of Exile is just simply, the side character in Path of Building's relationship with you, right? Like, Path of Building is the real game. But the problem is, like I said, is if you're like me and you haven't played in 5 years because you've been so busy, well, it's not like as if you're going to know what all of these nodes do. You're not going to remember that. You're not going to know all of these things that someone who was a veteran would know looking at Path Building, because Path Building is a representation of the game. And if you haven't played the game much, then, you can't really imagine that in your brain, right? And that was something interesting to realize for sure. So cool. Now, let's talk about Firestorm of Pelting specifically. So if you don't know, Firestorm of Pelting is a transfigured version of Firestorm that removes the giant meteor and just makes it like old Firestorm. If you're like me back in the day, I really loved Firestorm, like the old version of Firestorm. I was definitely someone who enjoyed it a lot. I played it a lot, and whenever they reworked Firestorm, the new version of Firestorm, I was kind of a little sad because I liked old Firestorm a lot more. And Transfigured Firestorm is pretty much just old Firestorm. Now, one of the problems is in a sole self-found environment, like a two-stone environment, there are two different versions of Firestorm other than the main one, and that's the Meteor version where you only get the big Meteor. I don't know what's going on with that one. I'll be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure. I think that version of Firestorm sucks in comparison to like maybe Firestorm of Pelting and normal Firestorm. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't really like that version of Firestorm. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. You know, obviously I'm relatively unfresh of Path of Exile, so if speaking like nonsense to you right now by saying that Firestorm of Meteors is kind of meh, then let me know. But yeah, Firestorm Meteors is meh. But the problem is when you're trying to find your transfigured gem in lab, in Merc Lab specifically, you have a 50-50 chance of hitting it. And I hit it the first try, so that made it a lot easier. Otherwise, I was gonna have to spend a lot more time doing Merc Lab runs. But doing Merc Lab runs wasn't even that bad. I'll be honest with you. A lot of people say like, oh, it's like one of the worst things ever. I'm like, it didn't feel that bad. Like I was moving through it pretty quickly, but that's because I have like, Frostblink on my bar. I have Shield Rush on my bar, and I was just like jamming, and the lab today wasn't even that bad. So that was great. But I heard from a lot of people that trying to farm your Transfigured Gem was ass, but I did not have that issue personally. Now, what are some other things I noticed after not playing Path of Exile seriously for a few years? First things off, what the fuck is going on with Exarch, dude? Like, I have done the Exarch fight a few times now, definitely a few times. But my problem is like, in terms of SSF, because I've always played trade, before this. I've only played a scant amount of SSF. I've always played trade. So by the time I get to Exarch in the normal game mode, right, I have like a 6 link. I have good items because I know how to make money, right? Because, I've been playing since 3.0. But the problem is, in SF, you don't have that access to that. I was on a 4 link and only a measly +1/1 with crafted flat fire on it. So I did not have that much in terms of damage gear. And I don't know what's going on with Exarch, man, in terms of the balls. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with the balls, because this time around, I had like almost 4k life. I had some spell block. I have actual chunk for once on my character instead of like before where like, I just corpse rush it in softcore in day one trade because, I had a lot of damage so I could just do it and afford it. But in like this, like I made sure that I was tanky enough. I had sustain, I had everything I could possibly need, and it was still a pain in the ass. And remember, I'm pretty sure this was the quest version of Exarch, which means that the big balls do more damage whenever, like you're doing normal Exarch, and then Uber Exarch does like infinite damage, right? In comparison, I remember that being a problem. So I don't know what they're expecting you, because like going from Exarch and then going to Eater is two completely different experiences. Like Eater feels like a much better fight in terms of telegraphs, in terms of just everything. Well, it's sad though, because I really like Searing Exarch though. I like the aesthetics of Searing Exarch. I like all that and shit. But my problem is just the ball phase. I don't know what's going on with it. Now, of course, you could say skill issue or whatever you want to say, but like from what I've heard and seen and talked about with other people, it seems like this is just a common occurrence between everyone. Where like we just like, I don't know what's going on with the ball phase. Like I don't know why they do so much damage in comparison to everything else, but whatever. I had my fun with my little SSF run. I had fun with playing around with no-PoB, but we're gonna do some more two-stone runs to finally get back into the jive of playing Path of Exile again. Now, like I think this is going to be more of a permanent thing now. I'm really happy to get back into Path of Exile and have a lot of fun with it. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. So with all that being said, this has been Dread. I'll have to go play some more Path of Exile. Bye.